Welcome back to the DEF CON's Career Hacking Village. This is Kathleen Smith. Yes, it's Kathleen on Twitter. I am so thrilled because I just learned something new about one of our panelists. Cyber Jenny has never submitted a talk before, and she submitted her first talk here at DEF CON Career Village, and she was accepted. So that gives us all the reason to, if you've never done something before, you've been in the community for a long time, it's time to get out and start submitting for the talks. I'm really excited that Jen wanted to put together this panel because we've had a lot of talks over the years in all of the various different conferences about what you need to do with your resume and what you need to do to talk to a hiring manager and what kind of search you should get. But we really need to start getting into our career paths and our strategies. And is it okay to switch around? And what are the different things we should try? So there are so many different avenues that we can have in our information security careers. It's time that we start talking to a few folks about what they've gone through and how they can inspire us to find our passion and be successful. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jen, who will introduce her panelists and our talk.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks for setting this up. This is great. Yes, this is the first time, so thanks for calling me out. Appreciate that. So, Jen Haverman, Cyber Jenny on Twitter. I've been, so I currently work for the National Security Agency as a technical director in Cybersecurity Directorate. I've been in the field for about 30 years now, maybe a little more, but who's counting? Um, I've had a number of different jobs in this field. I started back, before degrees in cyber were even created, so that was kind of tough. I think the first thing that I really got into, that pulled me into the field, was seeing other people who were excited about it. So, and I've met a lot of great people along the way, which brings me to the other two folks on this panel, Chris Sperry. I worked with him, I guess it's been probably maybe 20 years ago almost. And Chris has come up in the field, and I'll let him introduce himself. And then also Deb Herrity, who works for Department of Defense. And I met her at another job, probably like more than a decade ago. So this field is great. You tend to collect people like coworkers, colleagues. They become friends. They become people that you reach out to later for expertise. So without further ado, Chris, over to you. Tell me a
Thank you,
little bit
Jen.
about yourself.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name is Chris Sperry. Really happy and excited to be here, and it's always nice to see you. I know we don't live too far from each other, and yet we're running into each other virtually here. Yeah, I was actually thinking as we're recording this, my first DEF CON was 20 years ago this year, back in 2001, and I believe we started working together shortly after that. Clearly, since we're talking 20 years of DEF CON, and I've been doing it a little bit longer than that, I actually, got my start as a high school work study working at NSA, where you are now, and that was really, I think, the start of my career. I kind of was into computers a little bit in high school, but really kind of went full force after I took a test and they said, hey, want to come work over here and do something kind of fun. Not sure how deep you want me to go into intros right now, or if I'm going to pass over to Deb and she can do a quick intro, and then we can get into some Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Over to Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Herrity. I've actually only been in this field for 12 years. I kind of stumbled into it accidentally. I was working with Jen at a former company. I had a great opportunity to take some awesome classes, and fell in love with cybersecurity. My first DEF CON was in 2009, and it was very exciting, and I enjoyed every second of it. I am actually a technical director also at NSA. I work in the cybersecurity directorate as well. Yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Jen.
I just remembered that was your first DEF CON in 2009 because I was there for that. So
You
the
were.
company we worked for created a training cohort
Yep.
to convert people into the cyber career field, which was a great opportunity, right? But that's something that's like the right place at the right time. So one of the things that I get asked a lot is, how did you get into cyber? So I'm gonna say, Deb, back to you because you just talked about that a little bit.
I did.
How was that process for you?
So I had the opportunity to work on a proposal at the company we were working at. And as part of that proposal, they created this cohort, this training cohort. And it was like 6 SANS classes. It was 9 weeks long. We did 6 SANS classes, a bunch of Foundstone classes. At the end of it, I think I had 6 SANS certifications. I had a certified ethical hacker certification and Security Plus, and it was just 9 weeks of cybersecurity by fire hose, and I just loved every second of it. And so that kind of drawn that is what, like, basically was my draw into the field, and I haven't left it since. I've held multiple positions as a result of that, and yeah, so that's kind of what brought me in. I started my career as a software developer, and then did various things as a contractor. So I was able to dip my toe into systems engineering and various other things. But the cybersecurity stuff is what's really got me hooked.
Chris, you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to chat about it a little more. And it's interesting. I mean, I definitely have a quite a different path that sort of got me there, where I kind of started immediately in security, by virtue of the fact that my internship was with the cybersecurity directorate at NSA, and I think that's where I kind of got a taste for it. I became a contractor, a DoD contractor, right after high school. Working in the same building that I was a civilian in, and really kind of got lucky, and in a sense. But I think I was also willing to kind of put myself out there, and found someone that would take a risk on me as a 17-year-old, high school graduate at the time, to be trained up as kind of a junior person and build out a commercial, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing service that we were trying to bring to bear. And through that, I was, kind of paired up with experts, Jen being one of them, and kind of learned on the job. I had the luxury of being young and not having so many bills or anything like that, and really could just be a sponge. And I think I kind of like nerded out on that. I loved it, and I think that's what I've noticed about the people that I've met that are, the people that I admire and aspire to be like, are the people that get that level of excited in describing, what they do as well. And so I can remember long nights, in the lab on IRC, and poking and prodding different, exotic operating systems within, the test lab that we had created, and figuring out how to do all that. And from there, it was sort of a meandering path. I think there's something sort of like sexy and cool about breaking into systems, which is all, DEF CON and all that fun stuff. But there's so many aspects to cybersecurity, which is, I think, when I talk to younger folks, especially and now I'm a parent, and I'm looking at my kids getting older, and I talk to other parents in neighborhoods, and they're like, what kind of, words would you, give my child that's going through, high school, and what they're looking at going into college? I said, cybersecurity, even at large, there's just so many sub-disciplines. And so I've been lucky enough to work in penetration testing and vulnerability assessment, certification accreditation, cyber threat intelligence. And now I'm actually a manager over at Facebook, and dealing with the malware problem throughout Facebook's platforms and services. And so, I think that other people would probably echo a similar career path of, it's so easy in a sense to kind of jump to different things, especially as you're earlier on in your career and you're willing to kind of put yourself out there.
I agree, Chris. I relate to that, putting yourself out there, and I think being willing to try different things. That's kind of how it happened for me. I started at NSA out of high school. There's that commonality there. But I wasn't so lucky. I didn't go into the cybersecurity field. I went into some more administrative functions, and then they were offering a computer systems career development program where they were converting people into sysadmins. And so I got a lot of my background in security by working system administration, network administration, And that was back in the day when they didn't really have a lot of separation of duty. So I was like all things to all people, but hey, if they needed security documentation done, I'm doing it because I think that's interesting. What's required here? Oh, you need a cable pulled. Okay, I've not done that before. I'll do that too. That sounds like a great time. I got really lucky. I had good mentors in the very beginning and all through, really, now that I look back at that, because they kind of put opportunities in front of me or suggested things to me that I wouldn't have necessarily done. Um, I don't think I would have gone. One of the opportunities I had was to go full time to school and work would pay for it, but it was all more like network engineering, and it was kind of like Deb. It was kind of like your program a little bit, but it was A plus, network plus, security plus, CCNA, like all in 6 months, crammed together full time. And had I not had good mentors to push me and say, hey, you should try that. That's going to be good. That's going to be an experience that you collect in your tool bag, if you will. So I did the system administration, did the network administration, the security documentation, like certification, accreditation, which a lot of people don't love, policy, all of those things that are like the underpinnings, the foundational things you need. And then, probably 14 years in, caught up with Chris. And that's where we worked together right after when he joined that one company we were both with and had a great time with vulnerability assessment, penetration testing. And I remember even then we had great jobs, but we were still willing to do those extra things, whether it be software testing or working at a conference, like working at a booth, talking to people about products and services, which is not always fun. But your companies get you to do those things too. Just had a great time collecting experiences. Um, to that though, when you've collected experiences or found jobs that you've wanted or tried to target those, what kind of challenges have you guys come up with along the way? I mean, for me personally, it was I didn't finish my degree early on in my career. I waited till later, and that was kind of a hurdle. And I dug in. I really dug in on that and was like, I don't need a degree to do this. And I remember when I worked with Chris, I think neither one of us had a degree back then when we were doing vulnerability assessment and pen testing. Um, but I kind of found, okay, I really need to do this because it's a box I need to check to get the jobs that I want to have. It was just a means to an end. So, what kind of things have you had happen to you along the way? I'll go back to Chris.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to think, and I can say this from the past few experiences that I've had with both hiring and also being hired, is that the degree is definitely important, but it's become less important in some cases. I also don't think it directly translates to okay, well, you have to have X number of certifications. You guys talked a lot about the certification sort of tracks. And while I think that there's absolutely value, especially when you're trying to learn a new skill and that can kind of get you ramped up quickly, it's definitely not the only way. I think that kind of self-motivation and that sort of personal commitment to learning can be as equally important. I'll give you an example of someone that I hired at my previous company, and he was a career intel analyst. Decided that he wanted to get into network security. Kind of came through as a referral. Wasn't sure about the resume at first. But started to talk to him and realized, he had gone through the process of setting up a home network, setting up, different software applications and dev server and, testing environment and deployed his own IDS and, was using things to basically, teach himself. And I think that, self-motivation, that desire shows a lot as well. And so, while I definitely felt like there have been challenges where I've applied for a job and I didn't get that instant checkbox, previously of having a degree, I think if can give you that one person that'll take a chance. And now as a hiring manager, like I don't look strictly at do they have a degree or where is it from, or which certifications do they have. I do look at the specific words in the bullet points, and even more than that, when you get to a screening stage, really trying to get to know that experience. I think because, you know, as I mentioned, with having that range of experience, it's hard to get that sort of concisely into a resume sometimes. That's a real art, and there's people that are really good at it, and there's people that end up with 6-page resumes that also, you know, can be a little bit challenging and daunting to read at times. So, you know, figuring out that kind of sweet spot for delivering that is important. So, you know, I think as far as other challenges, you're gonna always have jobs that you don't get considered for. Ironically, my first application for the job that I have now, and it's actually not the job that I have now, but the company that I'm with now, wasn't accepted. And I thought, wow, I'm like a lead threat intel analyst at you know, a major company, and yet this company won't consider me. And then it turn around a couple of years later, and now they were pursuing me. And so it's just it's sometimes a numbers game as well. So be willing to hear no or not hear anything, but be willing to keep applying to more and more positions, and don't let the degree alone necessarily stop. That said, if I could do it over again, I probably would have knocked it out a little sooner, just so that it wasn't that thing that held me up.
Yeah, yeah, great points. How about you, Deb? Any challenges for you?
So I would say some of my greatest challenges were that I didn't get to dive into the hands-on right away. So I had a lot of training, and I had a lot of theory, and I jumped right into like an analysis thing where I was able to leverage that information to help inform other folks, right? But it wasn't as hands-on as I would have liked. So I think that's kind of been a challenge that actually has followed me throughout my cyber career, because I've found myself having to take more positions where they're more leadership-like positions that enable me to help others do their best, right? So as you know, as a technical director, it is my responsibility to, you know, to provide the technical health of the people in my organization, and those people are very, very smart, right? So ensuring that so I find myself in positions where I'm making sure that they have the training that they need in order to be successful in their job. So I would say that probably my biggest challenge, and continues to be a challenge, is that I did not get a lot of that hands-on experience right away. I definitely think that you know, some of the other challenges that I've experienced have been a little bit more with ensuring that I'm providing the right information to the right people in the right way, right? So so I would say that I've had to overcome some challenges. Like, I'm a flowery writer. So I know that, you know, being able to articulate things in the right way and all those types of things has been important. So I've overcome some challenges in learning how to write in executive ways and things like that, and being an effective communicator.
And I think
Those are probably my
another,
biggest challenges.
oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say another thing that I've definitely, you know, kind of struggled with, and I don't know if you guys felt this way at all. I've had certain jobs that I was in for much longer than others, and while I don't necessarily, I've not personally been an advocate of moving for the sake of moving. I've found that there tends to be, I think, for each person, that sort of sweet spot of staying motivated versus getting too comfortable and feeling like, well, I'm the expert here now, so like it's easier for me to stay here, and be willing to like take that next challenge and get outside that comfort zone. You know, when I recently moved, I mean, that was definitely something I struggled with. And, you know, even right now, being relatively new in the position, you know, I'm still kind of getting my feet under me. But I remember feeling this exact way about 3 years ago when I transitioned out of supporting government roles into a fully private sector role. And it was like, am I going to be good enough to do this? And you know, you rely on the people that you've met along the way and the skills that you've built, and know that like there will be a transitional period, and so be willing to like be a little uncomfortable and ask lots of questions. And you know, I think just like be informed before you ask questions. Like nobody wants to you know, answer with here's the Google response, but like, you know, I think finding that challenge of progressing far enough to become really good and learning something and contributing to the job that you're at, but also not, you know, doing that at the expense of being unwilling to move somewhere else and try something new.
I 100% agree with what you just said. 100%.
Same here.
I've
Same
experienced
here.
the same situations. I 100% agree. You have to move around. You have to take risks. You have to take challenges.
I'm new in my job as well as a technical director, and also have that struggle between, all of these people are experts, they're wonderful, they're very technical. How am I making sure that they're getting what they need? And I also realized too that moving into that position of leadership or management of security professionals, it's not something that everyone wants to do. In fact, I remember struggling with this mightily when managers are like, you're going to have to pick, you're going to have to choose a path. You want to be running the show or do you want to be doing this work? And I'm like, why can't I do both? And there are definitely some skill sets, though, that transcend both sides, management and technical, um, that I think are important. And I'm going to ask you about those. But I think, Chris, to your points about resumes between, the very concise writing, the art and science of resume writing, and then having that 6-pager. I think writing is so important, and I run into a lot of people who don't want to focus on that. It's a weak point, and I think it does them a disservice to not focus on that. Similarly, speaking skills and being able to present to people. You might not like people, and that's okay. Not everyone does. You might not be peoply or a flowery writer, but I think that you do lose out when you have great ideas and you cannot articulate them. You cannot sell them to a leadership team because that's where your investment comes from. Those are the people that will be the champions to get you the resources that you need to recognize whatever it is that you want to get done. So I would recommend writing and speaking skills to people, I think, and customer service. What are your thoughts about those types of skills and skill development?
Jen, I 100% agree. I would say that, in sitting in the leadership positions I've been in, I've had the opportunity to review many a promotion package. I'll just say that, right? And more often than not, I find that the people who are super, super technical may not be the best writers, right? So having that skill to be able to promote yourself and advocate for yourself, in written form as well as through communication, verbal communication, is definitely a skill that people should seek out to learn and try to develop over time. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, those technical skills are equally as important as the soft skills that we're talking about now in order to be well-rounded. I mean, I think if, especially Jen, as you talk about sort of that general career trajectory, even as a senior technical person who doesn't necessarily want to go into a people management role, you're still going to need to learn how to communicate effectively, right? When you get into those upper technical levels, there's an expectation that you're leading large projects. You're going to have to be communicating with senior leadership. You're going to have to be working across the lanes and getting buy-in from others. And so that ability to build relationships becomes vitally important. I mean, think about the fact that you're talking to two people that you've had a relationship with for 20 years and 10 years respectively. So if you're good at forming those relationships and maintaining those relationships, we always joke it's a small community. I'm sure that there are people that are probably going to be watching this that know us from a past life, so to speak, that it will be interesting to see. And so I think that is really important. And just like there are training, technical training classes, whether it's SANS or whatever, there are similar types of things for learning how to be a more consistent briefer, whether that's doing something even as what it might sound as silly as joining a Toastmasters group, can be really helpful in terms of figuring out how to deliver your message to people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree 100%. And in thinking about people who might see this, who knew us when, they're probably thinking, wow, they got old. When did that happen? But to your point on the relationship building, I think when you need to develop those soft skills, like you said, I think that even those senior technical people need to leverage those for influence, leverage those to build the relationships, to make things happen. So with that in mind, you know, yes, I've maintained relationships with you guys for the last 20 years. How do you go about maintaining your professional relationships? And I will say, I will add too, a lot of mine turn to personal. I tend to collect. It's the people that I work with the most. Um, we end up doing a lot of other things together, right? Because you have a lot of like interests, but we've tend to keep in touch over the years. So what do you do to foster those relationships?
I mean, I'll take a stab at this one first. Arguably because it's a little bit of a weakness of mine. I tend to, we're all very busy these days, and I think, especially once kids came into the picture, it sort of limited the amount of, post con drinks that I would be able to have, especially on the local ones. But I do think that conferences like DEF CON, like Blackout, like many others, anytime that you have an opportunity to get together with other folks in the industry, I value them as much for the talks as for the networking, and I know for a fact that I'm not alone in that. And so I do think taking the opportunity to go and get out there, go to a B-sides, go to a DEF CON, go to even some of these virtual conferences that have been going on is still a great way to catch up with people, in the virtual Q&A rooms and things like that. And then I think even beyond that, figuring out, is a informal like sharing type group, something that works. We've got different, whether it's Slack or Signal or whatever you want to use, these little groups that as you meet people, you add them and you maintain that, the discussion with them over time. And because people move around and go to different places, I can't tell you how many times like, oh, that person's over at wherever now, I know them, from working in the past, let me reach out to them, and it won't seem weird at all. It's not like you got to send them a Christmas card every year. Just when you do see them or when you do have an opportunity, just reconnect, and even if it's a quick hello or liking them something or making a comment on LinkedIn, even can be helpful.
What about you, Deb? Because I know we have a little bit, it's interesting, and I'll get into this question next on like the maintaining relationships, because we've both chosen to work for the government. Me again, you for the first time, I think. Um, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult to maintain relationships because you're kind of offline, if you will, while you're in the buildings or while you're focused on mission work. Even if you had access to everything, you would still be head down, I think, in the mission, because I mean, for me, it's just so busy. So, what do you do to try to keep the relationships up? Do you have anything that you could recommend?
So I definitely agree with the attending conferences and engaging with folks when you have the opportunity at those types of events, to really maintain those working relationships. Social media clearly is a way to maintain those things, like either LinkedIn, the professional ones, but also you can, as far as like those people who are still on Facebook and all the other platforms that are available today. As far as being at work is concerned, I'll send a little chat for some to people that like maybe I worked with in the past, and I want to make sure I maintain a good working relationship with them. Because you've due to the fact that this community is so small, you will, and in our environment, you may need to reach out to someone you worked with in the past to get a little assistance or a background on something, or just reach out to them and say hello. I found myself doing that a lot during COVID times, like just sending a text message to people that I was close with on in at work, and saying, hey, how's it going, are you good, like those types of things. Yeah, those are basically kind of the ways I do it. I'm a little bit of an extrovert though, so I'm a like rare bird at NSA. So not only do I do those types of things, I talk to everybody. So it building networks is definitely something that I like to do, but also to maintain. So the social networks are also part of that, right?
Absolutely. So the three of us, I think we have in common that we've moved around quite a bit, not in a bad way, but I think in a constructive way, People have asked me, why did you go back to government? So was started out government, went into industry, did both defense contracting and commercial, and then decided I really wanted to go back to government again. I always get that question, why did you go back? Maybe what are the benefits that you see? I think it's a personal decision. I think there are a lot of factors involved, including things like your benefits and your time off and your work-life balance, access to training. I mean, so many things. What are your thoughts about government versus commercial and why, or commercial versus government? Like, why did you make the choices you made at the times you made them?
I'll start this one off. So I wanted to have a louder voice, right? When I decided to make the transition from being a contractor, working in government spaces, to being a civilian, it enabled me to be able to make decisions and have impact really on mission. So that was kind of my main motivator for going from contractor to government. I would say there's pros and cons on both sides, and it's all based upon what your priorities are, like you said, Jen, and what meets your needs as far as where your career development, or what your career development goals are, right? So that was the main reason why I had flipped, and the benefits and that time off and all that is also good, but for me it was mission.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you make a really important point, and I think it's thinking about what your career trajectory is, and I think one of the things that if you do have a good manager, you should be at least talking a couple of years about sort of like a career conversation. What is the trajectory of your career, or even personally, like where do you want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and kind of drive toward that. In terms of sort of the government versus private sector, Deb, I completely agree with you. I struggled with this a little bit as well, as far as like being a contractor working in government spaces. There are just those inherently governmental responsibilities that, to your point, as a civilian, you have the opportunity to have that louder voice. And so there's, I think some of the coolest work that I've ever done in my career came while I was supporting government. And so absolutely loved my time, doing that. And that was actually the majority of my career. It's only recently that I've gone purely commercial. And it's just been different. The job that I have had just before this was with IBM's X-Force team. And, we're supporting incident response globally during a pandemic, where we can't deploy incident responders into the field. But yet we have all of these ransomware events running rampant throughout the globe. And, my team of Intel folks was helping to support that. And so I felt like I had a kind of a global impact that I'd never experienced before, because I was a contractor working in the civilian space, and you just don't get as much of that opportunity. With where I am now, it's a little bit different, and the job is still too new to kind of fully understand. But it is a social media platform that's got 3 billion users on it, so clearly some global impact there as well. So it really just depends. If you can find those right opportunities, it just depends on that personal balance for you. And I think there's no wrong answer.
I think you bring up a great point, Chris, because I heard this recently and it just sank in about a career conversation with your leaders. So that is different than a performance conversation. We tend to always have the performance conversations, but never really spend that time that you need strategically on planning. Like, what do the next 3 to 5 years look like for you? Are you at the end of where you want to be? You need that next thing or that next training, and what is that? And putting that roadmap together. So I think you can do that independently if you're not employed, reaching out to mentors, coming to say like DEF CON, the Career Village, the one at B-Sides, getting some career coaching, getting some of those people to look at your resume to help you with the structure. They do all of that there. So I've not run into that opportunity anywhere else. And so that's a good thing for them to do. I think for me, changing over, I really wanted to work mission again. I really missed it. I had a taste of that in the beginning of my career. And the reason I left because I was kind of lower in the structure and I wanted to get up faster in the food chain, if you will, than it was letting me to move. I guess, promotions being what they are in government. And so I had mentors that said, go outside, industry, uh, commercial, they're a meritocracy. They may or may not care so much that you don't have all of those boxes checked, whether that be a degree or certifications. So I did. I took that risk and jumped out. And it was really stressful to make that leap because that was the only job I had really had full time ever. And of course, you get a lot of family and parents pressure to, you just left a great government job. What is wrong with you? What are you thinking? Those benefits, the retirement. I'm like, but I want the challenge. I want the different challenge. I want a different perspective. So industry afforded me a different perspective, and I moved up rather quickly and worked in the management and leadership in different companies, and I really enjoyed it. But there was a siren song back to mission. I changed the couple companies, and I had tried a couple different times to go back to government service, and finally everything clicked. I'm like, this is really what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to go back. Will I stay a long, long time? I hope so. I hope I'll enjoy it to retirement, at least government retirement. And then we'll see, because I don't think I'm done at that point. There's too much out there that is exciting between industry and commercial, like, so defense contracting and commercial work and nonprofit. Nonprofit taking on some challenge. I'm pretty passionate about cyber training and making sure that we see entry level positions open up for people. I'm running into so many who are frustrated trying to break into this career field. So, with that, what kind of recommendation would you have for people that are just starting out, either haven't finished a degree or have finished a degree, maybe a cyber degree, and they can't seem to find the role? I've often offered that maybe you need to try something related to the role, someone who will take that chance on you. But what kind of guidance would you give them?
I'll take a little bit of a stab here. Uh, I would say, definitely a numbers game, right? Be willing be willing to shop that resume around a lot. Um, Figure out like what motivates you, those things that like get you up in the morning. When we talk career conversations, as a for instance, we think about like what are 3 skills and what are 3 strengths that I have, and if I can't quickly identify what those 3 skills and strengths, and really those are different things, right? Are, then I probably need to figure out what those are and what keeps me engaged and kind of move toward that. If I find that I really enjoy, working with large data, if I'm really interested in looking at, machine learning or getting into software development or security engineering, like you need to kind of figure out what's going to motivate you, because when you're engaged, you're going to do your best work, and your passion about it is going to show through that screening interview or that, full loop interview or whatever you end up doing. And so I think that people can sense that come through you. So if you can work on your communication a little bit and polish that up, and you can find the things that you are both have, sort of maybe a somewhat of a natural aptitude for, but also really like doing, and you're open to that kind of career trajectory, then I think that gives you your best kind of formula for success, in my opinion.
100% agree. How about you, Deb?
So I would say don't be afraid to try out development programs. So if there is an opportunity that you have and it's for a development program, and even if you may think you already know it all and whatnot, and you have the skills, a development program still can be a really good option and an in certain areas, right? It may be more for a government job, or yeah, probably more for government, but development programs. And I would also say leverage your network. If you're going to events like, like conferences and things like that, leverage your network, right? Meet people, ask them for assistance, provide your resume. And he's one, I just forgot his name. I'm sorry. It is 100% a numbers game. So yeah, I would definitely say, like, pass that resume around, leverage your network, and don't shy away from development programs.
Great advice. I will also say too, with passing around the resume, I've noticed the community's been very supportive. I've seen people ask for help on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and they get it. People are moving resumes around. They're like, hey, who has this entry level job? Does anyone in my network have that? So don't be put off if people don't respond to you. Just either try again or try someone else in the network. Somebody will ultimately respond. And again, back to that numbers game, I 100% agree. Put your resume out there. Also, tweak it for the jobs that you want. Make sure that you're not putting such a generic resume out there that no one can tell what you're really looking for. I always have tweaked my resume. And also, development programs, also agree. They're wonderful, having done two myself. And one more thing I was thinking of as well was related to uh, oh shoot, I lost my thought. It was a good one too. Um, but yeah, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there and try new things and reach out to people.
And if you have worked with people and you build that social network like we talked about, those people will help validate you to others. That has happened. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, hey, I had this great person, they're looking for an opportunity, does anybody have any out there? And so you get that sort of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon situation where somebody knows somebody and that somebody is looking, and because of that validation through your social network, you get the opportunity to get your foot in the door.
I remembered my
Hey,
thought.
Jen, I do believe one of those times you tried to come back into the government, I tried to hire you too.
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you for trying at least. And my other thought that did come back to me, and it's related to my recent job. When I saw my vacancy for my job, it was intimidating. There was a lot in it. It was, when I printed it, I think it was like 7 pages long. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I think that there is a trend for, especially women in STEM fields and cyber, to look at a job opening and say, I don't meet 100% of these requirements, so I'm not qualified. And I'm not saying look at something and you've only got 15% and apply. Don't do that either. But if you think you might be maybe 80%, put in. Put in for it, give it a try, get the feedback. It's going to be great. Even if you don't get the job, hopefully you'll get some feedback on the strengths that you need and skills that you need to develop.
Yes, Jen, that is actually a national average that we're seeing with many applicants, and this has been true for several years, that if if a female applicant looks at a job description and they only meet 80% of the requirements, they still won't apply for the job, where most male applicants will apply for a job when only they have 50% of the qualifications. So do realize that there are things that are required in a job ad, and then there are things that are nice to add. But we also fortunately have another talk that is part of Career Hacking Village that talks about job ads and what you should gain from them and how you should do that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that we had a panel, actually a second panel, that talked about mission oriented work, because we do know that there is so many opportunities for growth, for training, for certification when we're doing mission oriented work, when we're working for the government. And I really like the opportunity for people to see that it's not this staid kind of career path. It is something that is very challenging and something that you can give back to the community. So Deb, Chris, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for your work supporting the mission. Jen, I can't believe we've known each other for almost as long as you've known Chris and Deb, but we actually met offline before we met online. So this is great. Jen, thank you for all of your career coaching that you've done within the community and for making sure that we have this panel. If you want further questions to ask of our panelists, please ask them in the Discord channel. And as we were talking about career strategy, we do have career coaches that are available. Just go to the Discord channel and look at the schedule and who you want to schedule with. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us here at the Career Hacking Village.